And we are
Hola.
live. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us
Hello.
again. We're here for another exciting How to Make Your Own Manga Masterclass with Natalia Batista.
Hello.
Um, I'm hoping we're live right now because YouTube is doing its little loady thing in the corner, but it says we're
Yeah.
live. So I'm
It
going to.
yeah, it seems like we're live.
We
Yeah.
are excellent. Good. I'm just
Yes.
going to keep going then. YouTube be damned. Um,
Yes.
Well, thank you again. Thank you for joining us once again. We're really excited to be here. I am Kae Winters with TOKYOPOP. And of course, this is the wonderful Natalia Batista of Sword Princess Amaltea. Um,
Hello.
and before we dive into things, Natalia, you have a very exciting an announcement to talk with everyone about, right?
Yes. So the manga I made together with Tokyopop is I have it here actually. It's my series Sword Princess Amaltea, which is 3 books about a fantasy world where the princess rescued the prince. And this one, it's a full story in 3 books, and it's now getting a standalone sequel in form of a digital visual novel game. So if any one of you have read the books or are interested in the books, you also have them in your app, right? In Pop
Yes, we do.
Comics.
We have them in Pop Comics. If you go to
Yeah.
popcomics.com or if you search for Pop Comics in the App Store or in Google Play, you'll find it. It's free for download. You can read a lot of really cool comics and manga, some indie stuff in there, and also a lot of the stuff that Tokyopop has published.
Yeah. And if you don't if you prefer books, there are books in bookstores, but if you prefer digital stuff, digital books, they are in the Pop Comics app. And now you can also get like the continuation of the story or what happens after the book. But even if you're not interested in the manga, but you're interested in games and especially visual novel games, this game, it's up on Kickstarter. If you search for Sword Princess Amaltea on Kickstarter, you find the campaign, and we're 100% funded in just 24 hours. And now we're just reaching for the next stretch goal. Actually, one of the upcoming stretch goals is that if we reach, I think it was 4.3k dollars, I will make a bonus chapter where you can play the Amalthea's horse, Palifax, as the main
Oh
character.
my god,
It's
that's
gonna be really fun.
awesome!
Yes, it's gonna be a horse story, a side
That's so
story with a horse.
great. I love that. And we do also have the link to the Kickstarter. It is in the description of this video. So you can click straight through and take a look at it.
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest, I backed it as well because I love
Yay!
Amaltea. I love the world. I can't wait to see where this goes. I'm really excited. Um,
Yeah,
it's a really
and the
fun story.
demo.
It's been a little while since we explained a little bit about it, but just for anyone who's maybe joining us new or who hasn't read it yet, um, so Princess Amaltea is a really cool concept. It's a fantasy world, so we're talking like castles and dragons and magic, but it's a matriarchal world. So people live in queendoms, and queens are the ones that are in charge. And women go off as knights on horseback to go rescue beautiful men who, of course, stay in their towers and are protected and look pretty.
Yep.
And it's a wonderful look at sort of gender inequality by flipping it on its head. And it's a really fun story, great characters. I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
It's legitimately a really, really fun story.
Yeah, and it's only 3 books, so that's a good thing as well.
Yeah.
Many manga stories are just continuing forever, especially when it comes to Western artists. We Westerners, some of us don't have a good track record in finishing the stories. Well, the Japanese also have that. There's a lot of unfinished manga in Japan as well,
Hmm.
so it's not just a thing over here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this visual novel is a totally different thing. In manga, you have a narration, so we're gonna talk about script making today. That's very suitable. And if any of you are interested in learning more about making scripts for visual novels, it's a little bit different. I urge you to research it, and it's really fun. It's a different way of working. How I consider it is actually doing the manuscript for manga. In many ways, you have to think about from point A to point Z. You have to think about every step, every letter in the alphabet, like every step on the way. When you do a manuscript for a visual novel, instead of just deciding, instead of doing all those decisions, you can have all the storylines, because you can, like, you don't have to decide, oh, this character on this page says this and that happen, then these things happen on the next page. That's how we work when you do manuscript for manga. But when you do manuscript for visual novels, what happens on this page can actually lead to 5 different things on the next page, depending on what you want, you decide, the player decides. So that's quite kind of a fun thing with visual novels. It's more of a branching tree of possibilities of manuscripts. But that's not what we're gonna make today. Today we're gonna make a manuscript for a manga. But yeah, visual novel, go check the campaign in the links, in the link in the description. So that, and also the free demo for the game is already out, so you can already download it and play it. It's for computer, Linux, Mac, or Windows.
That's perfect. So people can give it a little try. If you're not sure, if you're on the fence about signing up for this, then you can try it out first. Also, I feel like I have to apologize first. My cat is in a mood this morning and he's making a lot of noise in the background. So I apologize to anyone if you hear a lot of crinkling and meowing.
That's awesome. Let's have him join. That's good.
Yeah, he's very excited. He's very excited about learning how to write a script to make your own manga.
Good. Very good. Let's begin then. So, as always, I have my sheet note over here. I'm just gonna get it up. So,
and of course, as always, if you guys have any questions while Natalia is going through this, you can write them in the chat here, and I will make sure that we try to get you answers. So yeah.
Questions both about script making, about manga, about me, about TOKYOPOP, about how to deal with manga and make I don't know, good stories, good work. Yeah. So in previous lessons, we've talked about how to come up with an idea, how to create a character, how to create design a character, but also create it in like personalities and such. And today we're going to talk more about how to actually write a script. So in many ways, these lessons have been diving deep, but also just scratching the surface, because we do 1 hour per each lesson. So I'm going to start by saying that this is just an introduction. In many ways, you have to do a lot of more studying yourself, but you can also do that while you actually practice your craft. And when it comes to practicing your craft, you have to remember, when you are a comic artist, you're equally an artist and an author, and you have to work on both of those skills. Just like you sit and draw anatomy and practice perspectives and practice manga faces and everything in drawing style, you also have to practice in storytelling, in structure of stories, how to write manuscript, how to write dialogue, how to make good dialogue that is interesting. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in this episode, but I also urge you to do a lot of research yourself. And remember, your authorship is just as important as your artistry.
We actually already have a question here from Gray Blue Me, who asks, "Is there ever a problem with thinking too far ahead?"
No, I think it's good to think far ahead, especially when it comes to a longer story, to know somewhere where are you going with it, what's the ending. Because just like we talked about in the beginning of this, the first and second episode is a lot more about building the idea of the story. And we talked about the importance of having a character development and having an idea of the ending of the story, because that's pretty much how you prove yourself as an artist or like creator. You prove yourself to the readers, because if you can't give them a good ending, you're not a skilled create, or you're not a skilled author of comics or manga, because the ending is so important. Like, you all know, like, a good book and a bad book, the ending is a quite big part of whether the book is good or bad. The ending is very important. We all know the ending to Harry Potter, which some people don't want to acknowledge, or the ending of Lord of the Rings, which is also kind of unpopular in some circles. So I mean, the ending to a book can be detrimental to its popularity or not. And that's the same reason to why, like I said in the previous episodes, why it's so important to do shorter stories in the beginning of your career, because you practice making endings. You learn how to say goodbye to your characters, and also let your readers say goodbye to the characters. It's very important. So yeah, that's thinking far ahead. But in saying that, I also want to say I'm going to show in this episode how to make a manuscript step by step. And I can show as well how you can do some steps for the whole story, but you don't have to do the detail work in all of the steps for all of the manga. So you can do um, basic outlines of each chapter. If you're going to make a longer story, you can make the basic outlines for each chapter. That's very important to have, but you don't have to do the dialogues for all of the chapters before you start the manga. You can work piece by piece. So that's also one way. It depends on how you work, and also it depends on actually what I wrote in my sheet notes here. If you work in collaboration, for example, if you're the artist or if you're the writer and someone else is doing the other work, then of course the author can work much more like parallel with the artist. So the author can work with the full manuscript and rework and edit it and test it on beta readers. For example, I talked about test readers, how important it is to have test readers, and that can be done while the artists work on each chapter. So it all depends also if you're a single person team, or if you're a teamwork collaboration. That as well. Uh, Also, uh, when it comes to learning about, before we start the lesson, when you want to learn about writing, don't just look at how other comic artists write manuscripts or how they work with storylines and everything. Also look at how authors work. And the good thing is that YouTube have a lot of both tutorials, interviews, streamed lessons. There's also a lot of different online courses on how you write. So there's a bunch of references and great literature out there that I really recommend you to also check out. How you write manuscripts for film or for movies, or how you structure a story. That's really important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and look at we've said this many times in the previous lessons as well, but look at the media that you really enjoy and think about, what did they do that made you enjoy it so much? Why did you love this comic book? Why did you love this movie? Why did you love this video game? Think about what
Mhm.
elements of the story really grabbed you and what they did well, and you'll start to see patterns in very good storytelling, in the pacing, in the characters, in how they follow the story beats from the beginning, the middle to the end. So definitely I agree with that completely. Is learning technically how to write is very good, but also learn from people that are doing it right. They've got good things to teach you.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a really good idea. I actually have a quote from I'm gonna see if I can remember it. It's the author Scott McCloud, which
Hmm.
is also kind of a guru within comics and comics education. He made a lot of books. He made several books on how to make comics,
Hmm.
and also and that includes manga. So one called Understanding Comics that I really recommend, because it talks about how the reader perceives comics and how you read a comic. And that's very important as an author or a comic creator or manga creator, to know how is my comic received by the target, the reader, the one that's going to enjoy my work. So Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud is definitely one of the books on your reading list, my recommendation. And he has a quote that I like quoting. It's um, um, let's see, learn from everyone, follow no one, watch for patterns, work like hell.
I like that.
Yeah. So learn from everyone, but follow no one.
Mhm.
Don't be a copycat, but make sure you can get inspired and get information and references from everyone. And watch out for patterns. Don't get trapped in a certain style or genre. Always challenge yourself and make sure not to stop working, because that's the trick to success. Just keep on going and you will get there. So that's a really good recommendation for you. So let's start the lesson. Okay?
Okay.
Yes. So first of all, what you have to do, like we talked previously about, you have to have an idea. And we already talked about that. So I'm gonna pretend that you already have an idea. And for this case, I actually made an idea for this lesson. So I'm gonna scroll down to my idea. Let's see if I can just pick it up here. It's down here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. So this is a story I will have. I think this is good for the screen, right?
Let me check
I hope so.
here. Yeah, that looks good.
First idea is to have a synopsis or a short outline or the short description of the story. So my idea is, this is just something I came up with before the lesson. The idea is named, I have a project name called The Witches of Heolia. This is really new to me, so let's see what happens. And in this story, it's about witches that a young girl who is picked up by some witches and is introduced to witchcraft and mystical rituals, but also becomes part of a kind of like a rebel movement, because this is happening in like a parallel universe, similar to America in the 18th century, but a parallel universe, kind of. So this was my idea, and now I made this short outline for the first chapter. So this is kind of like how you should make with, you have your idea and then you should make the whole story into flowing text, just like an outline. So this is my first chapter outline. Sarah is a young girl of 13 years old, living with her family in the 18th century town in the middle of America. Do research. I point that out. So this is for me. This is
You're
a
scolding
point of
yourself
me.
already.
Yes. Yes. Her father is a religious man, and the family is hardworking with their tiny homestead in the wilderness. But Sarah holds a secret. Once in a while, she's sent into the forest to collect sticks and berries and other necessities. But that's where she develops her magical power, manifested through reviving dead animals or plants. One day, two traveling women arrive to the homestead, and the family lets them stay over, even though the father is a bit cautious. In the middle of the night, Sarah wakes up and finds the women standing over her bed with their cloaks on, blood coming down from their eyes and black coal on their hands. She doesn't scream. Instead, she stands up and they calmly exits the house together into the darkness of the night.
Ooh.
And that's the first chapter. So this is how much text you should write on each chapter. Very much like a short description. It should be almost like a blurb on the backside of a book or backside of a movie, like a DVD. Do people even watch DVDs anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, on the streaming description on Netflix.
Yes. The Netflix streaming. Yeah, so short, very short. And the important part here is that when you write this short description, don't go into details, no dialogue, no describing details or anything. Just focus on the actual what was actually happening, step by step, what is happening, what is people doing. That's what important. So you can see here it's a little bit descriptive, but mostly facts, mostly focusing on what's happening. And that's an outline. And then you should ask yourself, is this a short story, which means the outline should be the whole story, or is this chapters? And then each chapter should have one outline, one short outline. You should also think about where's the scenes. And now the next step is dividing this into scenes. So first of all, we have the young girl of 13-year-old living with her family in this wilderness. So this could be seen as scene one, kind of. So I'm going to divide this into scene one. It's actually many more scenes in this one, but I'm going to try to put it in one scene because I think this is just an introduction to their life. So it could be several scenes where you can see the family daytime taking care of the animals, evening time they're praying, or maybe eating together, and then going to bed together, very close together, maybe several kids sleeping together, or the whole family bunkered up in one bed. I don't know, something like showing their everyday life. And this is very important to have an introduction. So I'm gonna see this as scene one, but it's actually several scenes, but it's so small scenes, so it's gonna be almost like snippets of their life. It's not much dialogue in my mind. It's not much dialogue in this scene one. But this is scene two. Scene two will be one scene where you actually see the main character, Sarah, going into the forest and actually reviving an animal. And this is where the reader understands that she's not normal. This is something special with her. She has powers. So this is scene two. And then of course we have the scene three when the ladies arrive. This is scene three, and this is gonna be probably like maybe evening time. Maybe it's almost dusk. Sun is setting, and they're arriving, and you can see how the father is a little bit cautious, but the mother maybe convinces the father that they should be God-fearing and God-loving and take in these women because the women have traveled far, yada yada. So I'm kind of in my head, kind of playing up the scene and thinking, how can I make that work? Could this be a scene? Can I see people talking and things happening? And then we have the last scene. Scene four is the scene when she wakes up in the middle of the night and she sees these two ladies with blood and coal, and they carry her, or they leave with her. So you can see how we made this one chapter outline into 4 scenes, and now we can start working with each scene. So yeah, that's my first step. And you can also, if you prefer, if it's a very very long story and you don't know, for example, you have an idea of what's going to happen but you don't know in what order, and sometimes the scenes needs to change places, especially when you're dealing with flashbacks or flash forwards and stuff like that. It could be an idea to use post-it notes and make a like tape together a lot of papers and make a timeline and use post-it notes to move the scenes around and make one scene that is Sarah waking up bloody witches by her bed. That's one scene, for example. And maybe that scene should be introduced much earlier. Maybe that should be, I don't know, maybe this should actually be the introduction to the whole, like maybe this scene 4 should actually be the first scene in, or some kind of flash forward should be in here. So maybe she, like this one, standing over her bed, Sarah wakes up, finds the women standing over her bed. Maybe this one actually should be the introduction.
And then you flash back to see what happened
Yes.
leading up to it. That's really interesting. And that is actually, when
Mhm.
you talk about the post-it notes, professional studios do that. Pixar does
Yeah.
that. Disney does that. Video game studios do it. Is they will have post-it
Mhm.
notes and whiteboards and just constantly move things around. So that's a
Yeah.
really good tip for not locking yourself into, well, it has to happen this
Mhm.
way because I wrote it. Well, no, you can move things around nice and easily.
Yeah, and especially if you're gonna introduce, for example, an editor or some kind of feedback group into the mix. If you have a friend that you like brainstorming ideas with, then it's a really good idea to have this timeline and have the post-it notes, because then that friend can say, "Does this scene really fit here?"
Yeah.
And one thing also, use post-it notes with different colors, because then
Yes.
you can make the scenes. You can color stamp them in different ways. For example, a scene could be red if it's an action scene, but it's maybe blue if it's a sad scene, or maybe it's a or maybe it's a green scene if it's a happy scene, or something like that. Or maybe the scenes are more connected to, if you're making more of a story in the kind of Game of Thrones style, where you have different characters telling stories, or you're jumping between different places or different timelines, then those different colors could be representing different characters.
Mhm.
So you have character A is blue, character B is red. And then you can, with your timeline, you can see, oh, wait, so in chapter 1, 2, and 3, there's no blue. So this character doesn't get introduced until chapter 4. Maybe that's too late. And then that way you can like have a bigger overview of your whole story with this post-it note tool. So that's
Yeah.
my recommendation if you're more visual and you like to be able to move things around and plan it. So this is the planning phase.
We actually have we have one more question just to interrupt very quickly here. Haloed in Red Roses says, it seemed like for a while Western comics were always done by a team, writer, penciler, inker, colorist. Is it common here for the whole comic to fall on one person's shoulders? Being in the publishing world, I can definitely give you some insight into that. And I'll tell you that almost every comic has some kind of a team behind it. It may be led by one person. Obviously, so Princess Amalthea is Natalia's. She wrote it. She drew it and everything. But you almost definitely had help with that a little bit, right?
Yeah, I had assistants. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Every manga that you read, it may just have one name on the title, but there's an army of assistants drawing backgrounds, doing toning, doing shading, doing the inking. All of our projects have teams working on them. You may know that we're doing the graphic novel / manga, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Zero's Journey, and that has an entire team working on it. We have several colorists. We have, obviously we have our penciler, we have our inker, we have our writing team, we have the editorial that's going through the writing. So there's always just a whole group of people working on every comic. And that's not to say that you cannot make a comic by yourself. It will be a lot easier when you have other people helping you, for sure, because if you draw your fantastic foreground characters and you're like, well, now I just need to draw like 1,000 trees in the background because they're in a forest, you might have a friend who is very good at art who's like, well, I can draw some trees for you. And you can help collaborate on that kind of thing. So definitely don't be afraid to look for collaborators. That's extremely normal in the manga and the graphic novel world.
And also because this business is doing comics solo is so lonely. So a lot of people just choose to have teams because it's more fun. It's an experience to have someone to talk to and bounce ideas off, and someone who can like tell you when something is not really up to par, or if something is a bit off character, for example. They can say, oh wait, this doesn't feel right, because they have learned your character, they have learned like working with your work, they know what's right and wrong, they've learned to understand the work you're doing. So I definitely think teamwork is good, but I can also see how a lot of young want aspiring artists, they see mangas from Japan, and they, for example, aspiring manga artists, they see mangas from Japan, and a lot of them have read Bakuman. So they think that, okay, a teamwork, because Bakuman is a manga about two people who wants to become manga artists, and they team up to make manga. And in that one, you see that, okay, there's usually either one or two, and then there's a bunch of assistants, and the assistants is almost like slaves doing your slave work. And that's not really how it is. I mean, sure, there is a hierarchy in the manga industry, but doing assistant work is also very much a it's a teamwork still. Like the usually what I've heard from people who've worked as assistants in Japan, it's very much of a family thing. It's like you become almost like best friends or family in the group, and you hang out together, go if you actually get a day off, you do something together. It's like a friends group almost. It's just like coworkers. You have close coworkers. So that is more common than I think people, young aspiring artists, think. And I also think we should kind of introduce it into the West as well, because I think I see a lot of aspiring young artists, manga artists, who would do so good as an assistant to someone like me, for example. And that's not, I'm not saying that because I'm like, oh, become a slave to me. It's more like, if I actually could pay these people to be my assistants, I would do it, because I think it's such a learning process. It's a very good process. The thing they have in Japan, it's a very smart way to introduce people into the business and learn the ropes before you actually start your own comic.
It's almost like an internship. You get to
Yeah.
learn from somebody who's been
Yes.
doing it a lot longer, who's
Mm-hmm.
already done sort of they may have made a lot of the mistakes that you will be tempted to
Yes.
make. They can help guide you, you can help learn from them, you
Mm-hmm.
can help practice, and it helps you get better at what you do. And I
Yeah.
can say for sure that a lot of the creators on our projects, when they're newer, they will get feedback from us. They'll get feedback from
Mm-hmm.
the licensors, from different people in the process. And the ones who go on to do bigger and better things are the ones who listen to that feedback, take it to heart, really apply it. And those are also the people that we contact next time we have a project. We're like, hey, you were great to
Mm-hmm.
work with before. You really listened. Let's go ahead and do some more stuff together. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into sort of the way
Yeah.
that the comics and manga work from the publisher perspective. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah. So let's go back to our Witches of Heolia. And this story, so far, we have made the synopsis, we have made the outline, and we have divided the outline into scenes. So now the next step for you people out there making your own manuscripts, get this far, and now it's time to make this into an actual flowing manuscript that you can actually make into comic pages. So I'm just gonna pick out one scene from this one. Now, of course, it's the best thing is if you actually work scene by scene and don't jump. But I'm gonna take one scene just because it's more fun, just to show what I'm meaning. And I'm actually gonna do, of course, the coolest scene, which is a scene where Sarah wakes up in the middle of the night and sees these two cloaked ladies with blood. So I'm gonna pick up this scene and I'm gonna move it down here, and now I'm gonna write it into actual flowing manuscript. So first of all, if it's a long story, work in chapter by chapter. So my recommendation is that you start by doing, like I said, synopsis, outline for each chapter, and that's good. The whole story. Do an outline for the whole story, but dividing scene, you can divide the scenes by chapter, like work one chapter at a time. So start by just doing the outline for each chapter, and then go down to just working on one chapter at a time. Finish that chapter, and you can, if you're an author, of course, you finish the chapter, and then you do the dialogue and everything, and the comic manuscript, because it's a little bit different than a just a normal book. It's a little, I'm gonna show you, and then uh, if you're an author, you can of course go to the next chapter. But if you're an artist as well, I would recommend you to actually draw the first chapter before you do anything else, because there is so much you can learn from doing the full process with just one chapter. You learn your speed, you learn to read the characters, how you want the characters to portray. There is a lot in the aesthetics and the visual part of doing a comic, which means the first chapter is usually, I think, the first chapter, even for a pro, is the hardest part, because the
Mm-hmm.
first chapter, that's when you get to know the character. Like, this is a stranger that just comes into your life, and you need to, this is the first date, this is the first moment where you meet the character, and you need to learn how is the facial mimics, or the body language, or their, how they do they answer questions, how do they speak, how do they what decisions do they take. All that is what you learn in the first or second chapter. So that's why I recommend you to finish that one before you do anything more with a manuscript. So let's say we're in the first chapter now. We're in the scene 4. We already made the previous scenes, and now we're gonna make the actual manuscript. So we have a detailed description. We're gonna make it for, this is for the scene 4, the detailed description. And next one is we're gonna make a little bit more detailed. So the scene is in the middle of the night. Sarah wakes up. It's dark in the room, of course. So let's put in some more information in here. She looks up. Um, the two women, the two women is standing. Look, see how I am Also, kind of making shorter sentences, and there's a reason to this. I'm trying to make short sentences that just include some few information. The two women is standing over her with their cloaks on. That's one sentence. She gets surprised, surprised, but she doesn't make a sound. Sound. She blood coming down from the women's eyes. Women's eyes. She looks down on their hands. They are black from coal. Yeah. So you can see how I divided this information into shorter sentences that are concrete information. Chick, 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 chick. She doesn't scream. Maybe I even add some dialogue. I don't know if the scene is going to have dialogue. Maybe I should add some dialogue, because otherwise, remember also one thing: if you want the scene, this is very important. When you make this scene in manga format, if you want the reader to stop and kind of reflect more, you need to add text, because text is very important to make the reader stop. If you have a silent scene, the risk is that the scene is going to flip. The reader is going to flip it very fast, and then suddenly the scene feels unimportant. So of course you can have quiet scenes, but I do recommend to add some text or some dialogue, even though it feels a little bit forced. Try to make it feel natural, because otherwise the risk is that the reader is going to jump past this. If we do want it silent, one way to make it a little bit slower and make the fact that the reader is going to stay there is we have to drag it out a little bit. So remember to learn the pace of a story. If you want a scene to be a very quick scene, like an action scene, you need few frames and quick movements. But if you want the scene to be more dramatic, or you want it to be a scene that the reader stops and reflects on, you need to put in more frames. So that's the recommendation, to have a lot more information if you want it to stop here. And so far I think this scene needs to be quiet, so I need to put in as many frames as possible to make the reader understand that this is an important scene. She doesn't scream. Instead, she stands up, and this is probably going to be a few frames in my mind. You can see her her feet. Maybe she just sits up. First of all, she sits up in her bed. Her feet touches the floorboards. I think they have floorboards. I don't know. Maybe they just have ground. I don't know.
Probably floorboards, I would say, in that
Yeah, it's a little bit
era.
cold, I think. So
Yeah.
Floorboards. The cloaked women move. Maybe they even stand around her. They form a circle around, like they hold their hands around her, form a circle with their arms around her. I can see how this could be really cool. And she's quiet, and she kind of looks at them. It's almost like an understanding. And this is, I also like, you see how I add information to make the scene longer and feel more important. Like maybe this thing with the arms is not that important, but for me it's important to just make the reader to just stop and don't rush, just calm down. So that's why I'm adding information, adding details that might be important, might not be important, might just be a way to halt the reader. So she's quiet. Then they both take her hands and the three of them move towards the door. They exit and they walk into the darkness of the night. So now I like cut this up into short sentences, and this is the reason to this is that the next step is to divide this into frames. So let's say that this is one. Let's say this is, I don't know how many pages I've already made, but let's say this is page 17 so far. So we're up to page 17, and this is scene 4, the start of page. So frame. I'm just gonna say F1 is frame 1. In the middle of the night, Sarah wakes up. So this is, first of all, we have to set the scene. In the middle of the night, it's the middle of the night. So that's one frame. Maybe it's even 2 frames. F2 is everybody sleeping. Everybody's sleeping. So maybe the first frame is the moon. That's a classic for me, at least. I put always in the moon, and this is nighttime.
Well, it's a good way to
see the moon.
establish, right? You have
Yeah.
to establish the location and
Yeah.
where they are and what the situation is. And if you
Yes.
want to establish that it's night, the moon is a universally understood symbol of people are probably going to be asleep. That's good, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we see the moon through the window. So the camera is inside of the house. We see the moon through the window, so we can see this kind of old kind of window, and like small window, and the moon and some clouds, and then everybody's sleeping. Yeah.
I just want to pick up on something you just said there, Natalia, because it was really interesting when you said the camera is inside the house looking out. That is a really good way to think about it. Think about if this was a movie and you were watching it, where as the director would you place the camera that you would want the audience's like gaze to go? So that kind of shorthand for, well, this is where the camera would be placed. The camera will be at a high angle, or the camera will be zoomed in. This is going to be really, really helpful for you for figuring out what visually you want your audience to get from it. And also, maybe you are writing and you're collaborating with an artist who's going to be drawing it. You're then giving the artist a really good idea of exactly why you wrote that scene and how you wrote it, so they're going to have a better idea of what to draw.
Yeah, my recommendation is, if this is actually a script if you're an author and you're gonna make a script for an artist, and you might, if you have an idea of how things should look, add in those details, but make it as clear as possible.
Yes.
Don't add flavor just to make it look cool or sound cool. If it's just a description, like this is just a description, in the middle of the night, the moon through the window. Maybe if I was an author for an artist, I would say, like you can say, like, the camera's inside of the house watching the moon from the window. So you see the window frame and you see maybe a curtain, I don't know. So you describe it a little bit, but don't add in like, oh, the feeling of darkness and it's looming. Don't add those kind of flavors. It's not important, really. Don't. Like, you're not making anything cool. It's just making it more complicated.
Yeah, the artist knows how to make it look cool. It's okay, but you definitely do need to be a little bit more specific if you're writing it for somebody else, opposed to if you're writing it for yourself, you already know in your head what you want it to look like.
Yeah. So far we have so F1 in the middle of the night, the moon through the window. F2, everybody's sleeping, so we see the people in the beds. Maybe this is even 2 frames, I'm not sure yet, but let's say it's just 1 frame for this one. Some of these decisions can be made when you're actually drawing, which is what we're going to talk about in the next episode 2 weeks from now. So right now, focus on rest writing. Don't draw. Like, this is the trick. Do not draw at this point. Just practice your writing, because you really need to practice this part of your work as well. F3, Sarah wakes up. So you can see her waking up. Maybe this is even 2 frames, F3 to 4, I think. So you can see her sleeping and then waking up, maybe. And then F5, it's dark in the room. So you can just see like the darkness, maybe some kind of panoramic view, and maybe, or maybe not. Maybe you just see, maybe we even skip this, because otherwise she would have seen the character. So she doesn't see this. She just wakes up and looks up. So this is better. So you can see how I can change the story even in this spot. We already know it's dark in the room because everybody's sleeping and it's in the middle of the night. So that's enough. F5, she looks up. And at this point, you have to start looking for cliffhangers. because divide the next page, you have to find where's the good spot to divide. And my recommendation is divide the pages where you have a cliffhanger, which is either a question is asked and the reply is on the next page, or a quick movement and the consequence of the movement is on the next page, or a discovery. Someone discovers something or sees something, and then we can see what they saw on the next page.
Yeah.
So this is what is happening here. She looks up, and we don't know what she's looking at until we turn the next page. Page 18 is F1, frame 1, is the two women standing over her bed with their cloaks on. And this is good. We can have a big reveal. Like maybe this is even one page. It's just one picture of these characters. So I'm just going to turn. Yeah.
I wanted to interrupt there because one of the best examples of that I've ever read, and I now for the life of me I cannot remember the name of the manga. I read it many years ago, but it was a horror manga, and it was a kid creeping up to like one of those old shoji screen doors that you have to pull apart, and he like leans in and you see him open it up, and I flipped the page and it was a double page spread close up of this horrifying woman's face, and I screamed. My heartbeat went through the roof. It was so scary and it was so effective, and that was a perfect example of he's opening the doors. We don't see the consequences of that until the next page. So like you're saying, maybe the women, because they're so scary and it's such a cool moment, maybe they're a whole page, maybe they're even a whole double page spread. It's something that's going to have impact.
And this is also why you have to know which page you're on and which page are together. So an odd number is always a right page because you count number 1 is first. So this one is with number 16, which is up here somewhere, is page number 16 above the scene. So this scene starts in the middle of the spread. So this one here is actually just happened to be the page break, the break of the spread. So when we turn this page is actually to the next page, next spread. So this one, page 18 and page 19 is a spread together. So I might even make this page 18 frame 1 might even be either a double spread or just a frame that goes a little bit over to the next page, which is also very common in the manga, that you can see that the frame is bleeding over to the next page. That could be really cool. So I'm going to make just few frames on 19 to make it not too crowded, so I can make that effect.
And I just want to jump in very quickly here, Natalia, because we have one more question, and I think it really applies here. Halen and Roses is asking, do editors generally review this part of the process before the page is drawn? Yes. It's actually really good, especially if you have like a beta reader, if you have a friend who's reading over your work for you. This is a great moment because, for example, that conversation that Natalia and I just had about the impact of something, and me saying, oh my God, wouldn't it be so great if you just flip the page and bam, they're right there. That could be something an editor can really help you with, is they can read through this and maybe they say, I don't get it. The pacing feels really slow and it feels like the shock doesn't really hit. Maybe try this. Or maybe the editor will come back and go, this is fantastic, and this is such a great moment. It needs more impact, so make sure this frame is particularly big compared to the others on the page. But yeah, it's very important to get feedback.
The most common feedback, though, I think many young aspiring artists get, and the biggest mistake, or the most common mistake they do when they do this kind of manuscripts, is they rush things. They put in too much information on each page, too much information, too many characters, too many things happening. And that's why you need an author or an editor or beta readers that can act like editors and tell you this is too much. You have to spread it out more. So I'm working right now on a comic for the Silent Manga Audition, which is a comic competition in Japan. And I had that issue. I made a story of 20 pages and I asked several people that I knew that is also manga artists, and they asked them to give me feedback. And the feedback resulted in the comic becoming 30 pages and just adding more information, scenes or information, or just dragging out some scenes just to make them more understandable and relatable. And so in the end, I added 50% to my comic, but it made it so much better. And that is something I needed to hear from someone else. Like
Mhm.
if you asked me, I would have just done the 20 pages and sent it in and probably had not so much luck. I think that the comic is getting better just by getting the feedback and
Yeah.
making it like taking more space, putting more frames into the comic. So this
It's
is
very
very
tempting
important.
when you know what's coming next. You know what the plot twist is. You know what the next exciting story beat is, and it can be really tempting to rush to it,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
want to show off the
yes,
really cool thing. So yeah, having an editor, like you say, that's really useful for them to say, well, maybe you're rushing this a bit too much. You need to spread this
yeah,
out and make sure the impact really hits. So yeah, hopefully that's some useful advice for you.
yes. So what we did now is that page 18 is the cloaked woman standing over her bed, probably a frame that is bleeding over to the next page. So we just have two frames on page 19. In the corner of page 19, it's it's Sarah's face getting she's surprised, looking up at them, but she doesn't make a sound. And you see their faces, or one of their faces looking down on her, and it's blood coming down from the eyes. So at this point, the reader is like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Is Sarah gonna die? Are they gonna sacrifice her? We're just expecting the worst. And that is the position you want to put the reader in, because you want the reader to not know what's gonna happen on the next page. So page 20 starts with frame 1. You see her, Sarah, looking down on their hands, and frame 2 is they're full of coal. It's black of coal, or something black of something. She doesn't know. She doesn't scream. So you see a facial shot of her again. She's just quiet, and now the reader's like, "What is happening? Why is she not afraid? What is happening?" They're kind of mean looking. So this is really, really not natural to be this unafraid of this situation. So I'm gonna just jump down here so I have a little space. Yeah. So page 20, look how page 18 and 19 was a spread. So now we turn the page 20. She sits up. I'm just going to keep it 4 frames here and just work with a little bit more space, actually, because I think this scene needs more space. And remember what I said again, if this is an action scene, you need to speed it up a little bit. If it's more like a drama scene or an effectful scene like this one, slow it down, slow it down. Her feet, so she sits up. Maybe even I have one scene with just the women um, next to the bed, Sarah in it. So I just see like an overview of the situation, just to let the reader get like an overview. And then you see just a zoom in on her feet touches the floorboard, and then we have the cloaked women form a circle, or circle, um, with their arms around her. This might need more frames than 1, because it's going to be complicated. So I'm going to say 3 to 5 is going to be. I'm just adding more frames. This is a movement, so I need to add more frames. I don't need to describe it in the text exactly the movement, but somewhat movement. Let's see if I just have to jump up so you can see. So you can see now here we're in the next spread is done. And the fact that they're forming a circle around her is even more menacing. So we still don't know if these are good people or bad people. So page 22, frame 1, she's quiet. Frame 2, they both take her hands. Then frame 3, the 3 of them move towards the door. This might also take more frames, but at this point, I'm just going to do it this way and then see if I have to add more when I draw the actual story. I'm going to keep this story, so I'm going to actually draw this scene out for you when we do the next time we have the thumbnail and the sketches.
Oh, cool.
The storyboards. Yeah, so I'm going to draw this scene out for you so we can see how we can actually use this exact manuscript to make an extra story.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. So the 3 of them move towards the door. They exit, and I'm actually gonna do page 23 is gonna be just one big frame where you see them walking into the night. You just see them, and you see the homestead. Maybe this is also a double spread, and actually these ones are just taking up a little bit of page 22, and then page 22 is bleeding into page 23 with just a big night sky and woods and the homestead, and you see the characters moving, the main character and the two women walking into the distance. Maybe even the main character has like a white dress on, so you can see the white in the darkness. It's going to be cool in manga, which is black and white, and you have to think about contrasts. So you have the
Yes.
moon and the white dress and the homestead maybe that is lit up. So yeah, ta-da! We made a script for the story.
Look at that.
So
That's
now
so
we have,
cool.
yeah, this is how you make a scene into actual story. And if you added dialogue, now we don't have dialogue, but if you added dialogue, remember that dialogue is so if we had like a dialogue here, instead she sits up. Sarah, I'm usually writing like this. Sarah says maybe, who are you really? Maybe she says that, and maybe she whispers. So I'm just adding like feelings or movement or expressions. I'm adding as in parentheses, yeah, in these clamors, so just for a description for myself, just to know that okay, she's very quiet. Whispers, calm. Who are you really? And they don't answer her, and then just continue. So yeah, if I would have add some dialogue, I would add it like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I make a manuscript, and this is what you need to do at this point. Just focus on doing the story outline. So story outline, scenes, and then go down to page and frame levels. Add in information. Don't put too much in the frames. Don't rush it if it's going to be an important scene. Rush it if it is an action scene. Yeah, that's it. And the next step before you're finished, remember to do readings. So I would recommend, if I were, now I actually read this for you, so I read it out loud for you. But if you have a lot of dialogue, my recommendation is that you take your phone and you just record yourself reading the dialogue, because that's usually when you notice if characters have bad, if you gave them bad dialogue, if you give them complicated words to say, if you can't pronounce it, the reader won't be able to read it. So don't make it too complicated. And also when it comes to dialogue, make sure, like I have a whole lesson about just dialogue. We don't have time to do that, I think. Maybe we're going to talk a little bit about dialogue next week. I'm not sure. I think so. But yeah. I don't remember what our next week's lesson was about. I'm just going to double check, but I think it is dialogues actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Do we have more questions?
Yeah, we don't have any right now, but if you guys have any questions, of course, put them in the chat. And of course, I know what it's like. You're gonna finish the video, and 2 hours from now, you're gonna be sitting eating a bowl of cereal or something, and you're gonna think, "Oh, I should have asked this." That's okay. You can send us an email if you need to. We do get your emails. I pass them along to Natalia. You can email me at Kae, that's Kae, at tokyopop.com. We also have a submission form on our website. You can also use that. That will also get to me, and I'll make sure that your question gets answered. Any questions that you have about the manga making process, anything about Sword Princess Amalthea, about the Kickstarter, about publishing in general, we're more than happy to help you out. Just drop us a line. Quick plug, this Friday at 3:20, we are going to be doing a live TOKYOPOP panel for Anime Expo Light. Yeah, because obviously Anime Expo is canceled, which is so sad. We miss you guys. But if you check in on Friday, the Anime Expo website, Anime Expo Light, 3:20 to 4:20, we are going to be doing a panel called Love, Love, which is about our inclusive romance manga line. So we have boys love, girls love, shoujo, josei, all kinds of romance. We're really excited to talk about a bunch of these titles and sort of introduce you guys to the romance angle there. We're going to be taking questions. It's going to be a great panel, so please feel free to join us with that. And Natalia, anything else that you have to plug other than the Kickstarter right now?
No, I just go down and check out the link in the description, check out the campaign, play the demo, tell me what you like, what you think about it, and and write your manuscript, because next week I saw now that
Yes.
we're gonna actually start doing the storyboards, the nemu, which is called in Japan, the storyboards. So yeah, make sure you have your manuscript ready for next week. For no, next week from that, 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from now. So you've got
2
two
weeks
whole
from now.
weeks.
Yes.
2 whole weeks. That's quite a long
Oh wow.
time to get something together and put it together. And yeah, hopefully you'll be making your manga as we go along, so you can show it to us at the end of the class.
Yeah. Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us yet again. It's been wonderful. Thank you for all your great questions. Thank you, Natalia, for joining us for yet another week. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks' time.
Yay.
Yay! Take care.
Bye.
Bye.